Max Verstappen is known for his constant digs towards the FIA, and this time the two-time world champion has sent a terrifying warning that can change the course of the sport. As one of the most popular and one of the most controversial drivers on the grid, Verstappen's threat towards the FIA is definitely one that we need to pay more attention to, and this time it seems like the Dutchman really means business. Now, the governing body has a serious challenge ahead of them in terms of organising the sprint races, and this time it may be the decision of their lifetime. Ever since 2021, the introduction of the sprint races has brought a lot of interesting events in Formula 1. The new format was mostly disagreed with by the drivers and stopped them entering into battles due to the nature of the format. But nevertheless, the fans were loving it, and it seems like the FIA has recognised the love from the crowd so much, they decided to increase the number of sprint races in 2023 up to 6. But from what we've seen in 2021 and 2022, there are lots of things that need to be changed, and that's why the FIA has looked into some of the possibilities that can be implemented in order to make the sprint races more anticipated by the drivers. As we mentioned earlier in the video, what the drivers are actually doing is trying to survive and drive a race without any consequences, just for the sake of keeping their high starting spot on Sunday when the points matter the most. According to the new format that has yet to be finalised, the sprint race will no longer impact the main race on Sunday, and drivers wouldn't have any particular reason to try and survive the race on Saturday. This is definitely what the drivers want to experience as the sport moves forward with the sprint race weekend. But according to Verstappen, this is definitely not the right path that the sport should follow. Although it's worth mentioning that Marko, the special advisor for Red Bull, has gone against his driver and said that this format is by far the best solution for the events that are set to host a sprint weekend. But before we go into Marko's statement and Verstappen's threat to the FIA in terms of the governing body failing to actually do something to improve the racing experience in the sport, let's see what this new format would look like in the first place. This year, the plan for the sprint race weekend is to scrap all practice sessions but one, with a plan to implement 2 qualifying sessions. The first one would be on Friday, in which the drivers would qualify for the sprint race starting grid, and another one on Saturday morning that would eventually decide the starting order of the main event on Sunday. There would be 1 practice session on Friday, which would be FP1. This is a huge difference compared to what we experienced in the first 2 years, with the original F1 sprint weekend seeing the FP2 on Friday being replaced by qualifying for the sprint race on Saturday, and the results of that sprint race determining the starting order of the GP on Sunday. According to Marko, this move is definitely in the right direction, as he went on to say, "We said it last year, this would be a better solution in any case. It makes the sprint race more exciting because you can risk more. In the old situation, if you drop out on Saturday, you are at the back on Sunday. Of course, that doesn't really help to take risks." The Austrian also commented on the fact that FP3 would be scrapped as he continued, "That session goes nowhere under Parc Fermé anyway. If you replace that with qualifying, that puts value on both the complete Saturday and also the sprint race in itself, because you can then return Sunday to simply the order of Friday. I think it's a definite improvement." Now, questions have been raised as to whether or not Baku is an event that deserves to hold a sprint race, given the nature of the track itself. This is a street circuit with one of the narrowest corners on the grid, which is located at the castle, and the overall nature of the track is full of bumpiness and tight corners. Nonetheless, the sprint race will be held in Azerbaijan, and Verstappen has yet again expressed his disagreement about the current format of racing. When talking about the solution of the FIA, the 2-time world champion added, "I'm not a fan of it at all. I think when we're going to do all that kind of stuff, the weekend becomes even more intense, and we're already doing so many races. I think that it's not the right way to go at it. I understand, of course, that they want to have basically every day exciting, but then I think maybe it's better to just reduce the weekend, only race on Saturday and Sunday, and make those 2 days exciting." Furthermore, Verstappen isn't a huge fan of the fact that the FIA is planning to expand the calendar to the point of having 30 racing events in the future, something that Ben Mohammed Salim has spoken about publicly. Now that the sport's popularity is at its peak, it's logical that it would visit as many venues as possible. However, it came to the point of us asking the question, is it really worth it? According to Verstappen, it definitely isn't. And as the two-time world champion said, with the sport moving in this direction, it's not worth it for him to remain in the most elitist racing sport, and he would definitely consider retirement earlier than anticipated due to the fact that he isn't enjoying visiting so many racing events. After all, who would enjoy travelling to so many continents and countries on such a tight schedule over the course of a year? The drivers have been constantly expressing their displeasure with the growing calendar, but on the other hand, the revenue of the sport has been boosted so much in the previous years that this is probably the price they have to pay for being able to earn the amount of money they're earning. But with Verstappen showing signs of retirement early, we couldn't help but ask, is there any truth and validation behind his comments? Even prior to the FIA making these changes in the sprint format and the overall number of venues in a racing year, Verstappen said that he doesn't have huge plans continuing to race beyond his 30th year of life. So there's a real possibility that the Dutchman will leave all of the fame and the popularity of the sport just for the sake of staying true to his word. According to Martin Brundle, Verstappen's words are definitely dangerous, but they hold no value, and he doesn't believe that he would leave the sport for such a banal thing. The Sky F1 pundit had a deep analysis of the Dutchman's statements as he went on to say, "I'd be surprised if Verstappen decides to retire, but if he doesn't want to drive it, there'll be a million other people who would want to drive that Red Bull." I think what he's trying to say is, using pleasant words, don't mess around too much. Let's just evolve and massage this along. Don't keep changing the ground rules. I get his point on that, but I don't really see why that would make him stop. Brundle then went on to support Verstappen's take on the sprint format, saying that what the sport has right now is good, and while the sport needs to evolve and be innovative, sometimes too much is just too much. The whole purpose of the sprint race, as Brundle said, was to add a bit of spice to Saturdays and Sundays events. So if you're attending a GP or you're sitting at home and watching, then there's a big moment and appointment viewing for the entire course of the 3 days. With this in mind, it's up to us to wait and see whether Verstappen's statements hold water and whether the Dutchman will stay true to his word. If there's one thing we know about him, it's that he doesn't mind racing in other categories. He expressed his willpower to race in Le Mans 24 numerous times throughout the course of his career, and he's doing it regularly on his simulator at home. So the talent for other categories is here, but none of them is paying nearly as much attention and money as Formula One, so that's definitely something that Verstappen will have on his mind before he goes on to send another threat to the governing body. What do you think about Verstappen's decision to retire if the FIA keeps the sprint format the same? Do you think that he's trying to make a statement just to scare those in power, or do you think that there's a legitimate reason behind Verstappen's words? Let us know in the comments below.